See, I said I was going to do a recap video. I think this is my first monthly recap video I've ever done. Yay me! I don't know how I feel about these because I usually don't read enough books. Like this month, I've only read 5. And I know I said this before, but the first half of this month, like I was excited to start reading. I read like all these 4 or 5 books in the first 2 weeks of the month. And then for some reason, around the end or the middle, I didn't feel like reading anything. It was crazy. I usually bring a book with me every day to work so I can read on my break or in bed. And I'm excited because I have all these books that I haven't read. But for some reason, I just couldn't force myself to read anymore after the middle of the month. So I've only got 5. I'm going to go from worst to best. I couldn't figure out from best to worst or worst to best. But let's do worst to best. So my only 1-star read was Bonecryer's Moon. And I'm sorry, it was a little boring for me. By that I mean a lot of boring. I loved the first tenth of the book up until the characters met. And then the whole plot was derailed by attraction. I was really hooked by the revenge story, but then it took a 180. Ignores the side character and makes all the adults look bad. I really did enjoy the magic Reaper-like system and the world building. And just the whole general idea of being in a France-inspired location. Like, it was really exotic, and they kept throwing in these French words every now and then. I like that. And most of all, the cover is gorgeous. I know I've said it before, but this cover, is amazing. And I also like how the different animals give you different powers according to their bones. Like speed, strength, night vision. But the action took over from the beginning, and it never really picked up from there. They basically go through a ritual to become what's nicknamed a bone crier. To finish off this ritual, they have to summon a man onto a bridge and dance with him and kill him. And Sebastian's dad is killed this way, so his life goal was revenge. And I was all for it, but predictably, they meet, they fall in love, all of a sudden, they mess up the whole wheel of nature, change their mind about the revenge, spend the rest of the book with miscommunication, hiding, and trying to fix their mistakes. I was just completely disappointed with it. A good quote from this book, though, would be, I'm going to butcher this. There's an old Gaelish saying my father used to say when he had to leave for a little while. He'd hold my hand like this and whisper, Tu ne me manques pas. Je ne te manque pas. It means, you're not missing from me, I'm not missing from you. So that quote, that was a really soft quote for that moment, okay? Especially for his character. I just thought it was sweet. Number 2. These are the 2-star reads, by the way, also. A Taste of Golden Iron. Or is it Iron and Gold? I can never remember. Similar to the last one, I was really looking forward to reading this when I pulled it out and saw the cover. How beautiful it was, what it was about, the synopsis. You never find a romantasy lately that's so blatantly about a relationship like this, but yet just not a romance book. Unfortunately, this is a 2-star read, so it can't be that praised. And there actually is a book on this list later on that shows up much higher with the same idea. You just don't see that many books with this premise in the modern, mainstream era. And I got this from a book box. I had no idea what it was. And all those that come from one of those book boxes, I assume, are pretty mainstream. And this advertised as a fantasy romance. Yeah, that's basically about all it is. It's just romance. And it's extremely slow romance. If you're looking for a relationship between these 2 characters, you're not really going to get it. You're going to get a lot of teasing. I mean, not even teasing, in a fun way. I mean teasing you, as in the bad way. I don't mean slow burn. I mean you turn the stove on and forget that you even had water boiling. Kind of slow. It spends a lot of time, I want to say 70% of the book, just getting the characters to be semi-comfortable around each other. Enough to even talk to each other. Because there's this divide between them as status. He's a guard, he's a prince. So they can't really just talk to each other plainly. They have to use honorifics and ask permission or realize what they can and can't talk about. And a lot of the book is them slowly just getting permission to talk to each other like regular people. The biggest problem I had was that there would be these random bouts of forced comforting scenes. The prince, our main character, suffers from anxiety. So if you're looking for a book about that disability, this is it. This is his character. the episodes come up all the time to where something will set him off, and it makes everybody else go into this urgent state of emergency. Like they have to drop what they're doing and go comfort him immediately to make him feel better about himself. It's basically a really soft fan fiction. If you want a really soft romance where the characters just slowly open up to each other and then walk around, I don't know, if you like to be teased and led around like that, I mean, knock yourself out. But for me, if you're going to have a read like this, I expect a big payoff at the end. And the payoff that we got wasn't that big. A quote from this one would be, "His hands told fewer lies than his mind did." That one makes you think a little bit. Next up, I have the 3 stars, which would be Robin Hood, the First Arrow. So I've already made this known, but I'm on this life journey to read as many Robin Hood books as I can. And I don't mean like nonfiction life ones or whatever. I'm talking about like stories. Because I love the show, I love to tell, and I want to read the perfect fantasy book, which I'm pretty sure I have. I just haven't mentioned it yet because I read it way before I started recording these reviews. So I got about 50-50 with this one because I don't want the facts and the prove what was real and what wasn't real. Kind of like the whole King Arthur thing. You don't watch King Arthur movies to tell you that he probably wasn't even real, right? You watch him who took up this magic sword with his wizard and destroyed and saved the kingdom and the court drama. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like this with Robin Hood. I don't want to hear that, oh, realistically, his name was probably Robert, you know? It doesn't sound as good. You just gotta read a good story sometimes. It's meant to be an origin story, but it's based off of the real life information. So names have been changed to try and reflect that. Like Robert and Matilda instead of Marion. It did take me a little bit out of the immersion, but I think it flows really well as a story from the beginning to the end. Like there's not really a moment where it just dragged on. Like I was amazed at the writer's ability to tell a story. And a good part that I took away from it was that the people you hang around also reflect on your reputation. And hanging around criminals also lead to a bigger downward slide. It's, Robert, I feel like, I'm calling him Robert already. It's meant to be his rise from a peasant to leader of this gang and the romantic version of him in the woods. But really, the story's more of him on a downward path from his normal life to doing things against his morality, turning into a criminal, missing the love of his life, killing people. So it's a different trajectory than you would expect, but I actually enjoy the theme of it. I wasn't a fan of how he came about the gang. We're used to him being this charismatic leader and people joining him because of that. But in this one, he kind of joined a gang that already exists. And then he kind of takes it over through a little bit of mutiny at a time until it just accumulated into his own branch. He was also a bit more hating than the cockiness I'm used to. We're used to him, taunting and being cocky, yeah, sure, but he was just downright mean and cruel sometimes. Still, it was okay as an adventure book. I just don't know if I prefer it as a Robin Hood book. Poverty can make a Judas out of anyone, as quoted by Tuck. So, into the 4 stars. I have 2 this time. I want to say 4 stars are usually what I have most of, because I really do enjoy most of what I read. And I just don't want to say anything can be perfect, so I have to go with nearly perfect. One of these 4 stars is Winterset Hollow. Where the hell did this book come from? Am I right? I also received this out of a book box, and that was, I want to say Down the Rabbit Hole book box. And it was a refreshing surprise. I had no idea what to expect going into it. So it's a concept that we are very familiar with. It involves people who get invited to go to an island. Except this time, they're going to visit a place that belongs to an author that they loved, who wrote a very special children's book. And it's just a children's book with some strange poems. But to them, to each person, they share these stories about like what it meant to them as a child to have this book. The main characters of this one, they kind of have trouble fitting in at life or finding where they're supposed to belong. So they appreciate that this book was there for them when they needed some escapism. And when they get to the island, you could tell something is strange and off. So they end up trapped and being hunted on the island. And that's as far as I'm going to say because I don't want to spoil it, but it's not the usual game, as you could say. but it ends up being quite imaginative and disturbing. There is a lot of action and blood, so if you're here for that and a fast pace, then it's definitely geared for you. Sometimes it does drag on for a while, but that's usually after there's been a lot of action and you kind of want to rest and there's no time for rest. And I think this is meant to reflect that the characters feel this way and they just have to keep surviving. But also, like, when you think a big kill should finish off someone and that's the end of it, suddenly it's not, and they're back again and again and again. But when I saw the twist of this book, I was like, wow, that's something new. I didn't see it coming. It's a thriller in a way that it's coming, except you like can't really, huh? I'm sure there's plenty of hidden messages and political stuff, but I don't care about any of that in my books. I just want a good story. And so this one does deliver that. It's also responsible for one of the best quotes, in my opinion. I even got a bookmark that I use all the time. They say you should never meet your heroes, but I say better to know who you put on a pedestal. Don't you agree? The next 4-star read would be The Depths. And this is another one that's similar to Winterset Hollow in the way that it's a thriller. And it also takes place on an isolated island. I didn't know I've read that many books about isolated islands, but here we are. And we are in the eyes of a character who is recovering from a diving accident that basically killed her for a little bit. And she's in this constant state of depression where she might not be able to do the things she loves anymore for the rest of her life. And she's trying to come to terms with that. And it just so happens that they're doing this on an island while her mom is on her honeymoon. So to give them privacy, she pretty much left to her own devices as she explores the island. You can tell from the start that this place is creepy and it's eerie, and it starts like calling to her and tempting her to do things. It shows her places and secrets that nobody else knows about. We have ghosts and hauntings and creepy stuff in general, especially the foliage. And it's all connected to the mystery of this island. And I really enjoy how it all wrapped together. Especially the villain, who can be empathized with. Like, it's not just a random bad guy. It's somebody who was done wrong and is kind of broken from it, which I like that for a villain. In fact, it might be my favorite villain on this list because these other books are just stories about characters and they don't really have a set villain. My only complaint was the later half of the book after the climax happened. It was a lead up to the best part, and then the book has to end somehow. So it felt a little rushed at the end, but that doesn't really matter because I've already enjoyed the book. And I like the creepy hint that near-death experiences can open you up to can make you more susceptible to peeking behind the veil. A good quote from this one would be the very first line of the book, and probably the hook. There's a video of me dying on the internet, and I can't stop watching it. The next one would be the second to last of the best books, which astonishes me because thinking it back, I'm like, why would I not put this one first? And that would be Night Runner #1, Luck in the Shadow. Like, I'm surprised I didn't rate this one the best because of how much I enjoyed it. Then I remember how slow it was, and now it's making sense. This is what I was talking about when it comes to A Taste of Iron and Gold. We got the same premise, but it was done a little bit better. I love these two main characters, Alec and Sergil. It does take a while with the setup with, young Alec being thrown into a world of political intrigue. I think I would have enjoyed this book more if I haven't been reading and studying lately all about how when you're writing a book, we're not supposed to just tell every little piece of the world as it is. I think I would have enjoyed it more if I haven't been reading that. But now that I have, I noticed it. And there's a bunch of times when they're just there and you have these things where one character comes from a town that's never seen anything else about the world. So they use him to ask questions as us readers to the character who knows almost everything. They use him to give exposition and backstory and explain everything about the world. The basic story is Sergil is kind of this master spy / thief. He likes disguises a lot. And he works for this network in the Queen City that's that's led by a wizard. And they basically try to stop political subterfuge behind the Queen's back. And it's so secretive that even she don't know what they do. Because it requires a lot of shady maneuvers that a lot of legal people technically aren't allowed to do. For instance, if you know someone's got papers, but they're never going to bring those papers out of the house, you have to come up with, they have these people who enter it for them illegally, but for the greater good. It's sounding worse the more I try to explain it. Okay, but they're the good guys. The political plot covers the story like a huge umbrella, but underneath it, these two characters steadily grow close. So yes, it's about their relationship, because they do end up in a relationship. It's not something that gets established. It's just they express how much they care about each other. And it's so subtle that honestly, if I didn't know this going into it, I probably wouldn't have guessed it. I just thought they were really close friends. Because it isn't forced on you in a way that makes it unbelievable. And I really like that the author said that their relationship isn't the story. It's just that it's there in the story. And that's what makes it work. So I really, really love this book. I love the political drama and the intrigue and the action. It just dragged on sometimes, especially when it tried to cover its own plot holes that I didn't even really care about, because I couldn't keep up with a lot of the political stuff. I ended up just skimming a lot of it. I thought maybe I should have wrote this stuff down to try and figure it out, but then I thought, no, it's not really that important because it's going to be settled, and I only care about what happens to these two. I don't know. It's just, it tried really hard to make us see the cleverness of the political stuff, but in reality, if I can't keep up with it, then I can't acknowledge how clever it is. Also, I think it holds up really well for its time, which is 1986, mind you. But some of the dialogue feels a bit outdated. Like, people don't talk to each other that way anymore. So I'm hoping now that the setup has had its run, maybe in the next book we can get more just straight to action and stuff. We don't need the backstory and the setup because we've already done it, right? So the next book should technically be a 5-star read? Yes? Maybe? Cursed be the weapon that tastes the blood of a friend. Dramatics, Arigal. And finally, the only book I was able to 5-star this month was Fable by Adrienne Young. And why? Like, I don't even know why. This book was just simply amazing. I couldn't put it down. And I was loving it. Was I just in a weird state of mind or what? Like, as soon as I was done, I went immediately and bought the sequel. It's a simple adventure story where our main character, Fable, which I love these names. You got Saint, you got Fable, West. I like them. She's trying to trade her way off an island that she was left on a long time ago to go on a search to find her father. And I think that there's just this special connection between daughters and their fathers. So maybe that's why it hit hard for me, especially the dedication in this book. You open it up and it's dedicated to her dad. And I don't know, it was touching for me. But I literally couldn't find anything wrong with this book. The ship was a fun, great journey to watch them be forced to interact. Getting to see the new places, even details about the gems. And as usual with pirates, you don't know who you can trust. There is romance in it, but it's more of a development across the book, and it's not until the end. So I don't really have an explanation for it. It's just, it stuck to what it meant to be, and it didn't stray too far from that. I tried to be something it wasn't. It was just a classic fantasy adventure book about a girl who tries to get off an island, gets on a ship, beelines from there. A quote from this one: "She was a pattern of the stars he navigated by, the sum of all directions on his compass, and he was lost without her." So that's all I've got for January. I was hoping to read more, but like I said, I couldn't. I picked up like 3 books that I thought I wanted to read, and then I'm just like, I kind of don't. And then I put it back, and then I would pick up a different book. I'm like, no. And then the next day, I would put that book back because I didn't read it, and then I would grab a different book, like maybe I'll read this one. And it wouldn't happen. So it's strange to me, but I've noticed that like all the genres I've listed higher have been other genres than fantasy. I think that I have just such high standards for fantasy at this point because, we've read all the good books. You've read the Knights of Radiance, Way of Kings. You read The Witcher. We read Percy Jackson, Kingkiller. We read all the good fantasy books, so it's hard for other ones to stand up to it. And I feel bad about that because all these other books don't have to be those books to be good books. It's just that I've seen the best that can come out of the genre, so I guess it can't be helped. Anyway, that's all for January, so let's start February. Thanks for watching.